Let's talk about adding and subtracting decimals. First thing I want to talk about is place value. It's really, really important. I'm sure you've heard it 10 billion times from your teachers, but let this be the time that it really makes sense to you. Okay, if I want to make the number 7, okay, I'm going to take it, I'm going to put number 7 somewhere on this chart here. Now I need to put it underneath one of these place values. So I'm going to put it under 1 in the ones place, and that's a very simple way to represent the number 7. That could be like $7, 7 apples, whatever you want to talk about. It's just counting. Okay, simple enough. Now, if this were $7, that's fine. But what if I don't have $7 bills? What if I have 7 $10 bills? Well, that's going to be a very different thing. I would need to put it in a tens place because each of those bills is worth $10. So if I move over here, that takes care of that. It tells me I have 7 tens. Now, here's the problem. If I take away this place value chart, what is that number going to look like? It's just going to look like 7. I need something here to show that it actually is in the tens place, not just off by itself in the ones place. So I'm going to take a 0 and put it right here, and that's how we get our 70. 7 $10 bills is going to be 70, or equivalent to 71 $1 bills. Now, this is nothing new. This is whole numbers. This is stuff you learned in kindergarten. What is new is this stuff over here, tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. This is a very natural thing, and normally we don't have one of these decimal points here for numbers like 70 because, well, it's just 70. We don't need a decimal point there for whole numbers. We know it's there, but decimal point is actually there for every whole number. We just sometimes leave it off. It doesn't even matter what the number is, as long as it's a whole number. I could have $700 bills. I need another placeholder 0, but I really don't have to have this. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and make ourselves a decimal number. Instead of 700, let's do 7 tenths here. Now, this is going to tell us this is less than one whole. You know, have 0 ones, 0 tens. In fact, I'm going to get rid of this. We really don't need it. But even still, you could technically write it like this and still get the idea, as long as you have that decimal point there. So if you don't, then again, if we take away the place value chart, it's just going to look like 7 again. So we need that decimal there to say this number is less than 1 and what place value it's in. Now, if I don't have 7 tenths, well, tenths would be like dimes, right? If I have 7 hundredths, that would be like a penny. So 7 hundredths would be like 7 pennies. Again, I have my decimal point, I have my 7, but if I delete this chart, it would look like decimal point 7. You might mistake this for being 7 tenths. We're going to need another 0 here to hold that spot. It's very, very important. Just like we need a 0 here to make 70, we need a 0 here to make this 7 hundredths. There's a big difference between a dime and a penny, so we need that 0 there to hold the spot, the placeholder 0. Okay, and that really relates to the biggest mistake that people make as they're adding and subtracting decimals. Okay, let's go to this diagram here. Again, seems very simple. We have apple plus apple equals 2 apples, right? Orange plus orange equals 2 oranges. Okay, nothing new here. Now, if we assign value here, if an apple's worth 1 and an orange is worth 10, well, then 1 plus 1 apple is going to equal 2 apples. Well, if an orange equals 10, then 10 plus 10 is equal to 20. Again, pretty straightforward. Apples and oranges are not the same thing. Here's the mistake that people make. An apple plus an orange cannot equal 2 apples, nor can an orange plus an apple equal 2 oranges. Okay, it just doesn't make sense that way. Obviously, if you were counting your fruit like that, you would not end up with 2 different fruits. So, and this is, or I would say this is even more obvious when we assign values to them. 1 plus 10 is not equal to, 10 plus 1 is not equal to 20. It just doesn't make sense. We got to make sure when we're adding or subtracting, we are adding and subtracting the same things. This is not the same. Apples and oranges are not the same. So let's take a look at that in the frame of an actual math problem. Okay, so I have 2 numbers here, 3 tenths and 25 hundredths. Now, if I were to put those on a place value chart, it would be a lot easier. But I don't have a place value chart here, so I'm going to use some pictures to kind of represent this before I even worry about addition or subtraction. So let's build these 2 numbers. Now, before we do that, let's go ahead and add this together as if it is as it is right here. Okay, so 3 plus 5 is 8. And 2 plus, nothing is 2. Let's see here. There should be a decimal point because there's a bunch of decimals. I'm going to put a decimal there. And I'm going to end up with an answer of 28 hundredths. Now, that's what a lot of people would get here. They're making the mistake that we saw up here. They're adding apples and oranges. And that's right here. These place value spots are not lined up correctly. The spot to the right of the decimal is always, always, always the tenths place. The spot 2 spots away from the decimal is always, always the hundredths place. So I just added tenths plus hundredths. Let's look at that. Let's build these numbers. I'm going to get rid of that because it's wrong. I'll move that over here. And let's take a look at these numbers. So first of all, I'm going to use some base 10 blocks. So I'm going to build 3 tenths first. So there's 1 tenth, 2 tenths, and 3 tenths. All right, so I'm done here. That number's built. So I'm going to build 25 hundredths. So I see I have 2 tenths in that number. So I'm going to pull over 2 of these guys. And I have 5 hundredths. So I'm going to pull over 5 of these. Okay, so a couple things. It shows us, we can see the size. This top number is bigger, even though people are tempted to say this is smaller. Looks like we have 3 of something here and 25 of something here, but that's true, but it matters what they are. These are much larger pieces. I have 3 of these pieces are larger than 2 of these plus these smaller hundredths down here. So if I'm adding these together, I can't count all these pieces together. It's like apples and oranges, right? Okay, I gotta take these and only add similar things. So I'm going to take these 2 tenths here, and I'm just going to put them up here. And I don't have anything to add these to, so I'm just going to leave them right there. Okay, so I'm going to count my tenths, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tenths. And I realize I'm adding this 3 here and this 2 here. So the mistake I made here is that I do not have my place value lined up. So if I take this and just scoot over a little bit, then I'm going to be in good shape. Now I have my 3 and my 2 tenths lined up correctly. So when I add them together, I'm going to get my 5 tenths here. Now what might be a little bit confusing is when we first learned how to add, we always said line up everything to the right. Well, that's because everything was in the ones place, or at least started in the ones place. It doesn't work that way when you go into decimals. We need something here. That's that placeholder 0. So I'm going to turn this into a 0. And I'm allowed to do that because that's just saying I have 0 hundredths, which is true. When I started out, there were 0 hundredths. There were only 3 tenths. Doesn't change the value. And now I can add like normal. Okay, 0 plus 5 is 5. 0 hundredths plus 5 hundredths is 5. That's my 5 hundredths down here. 3 tenths plus 2 tenths is 5 tenths. That's what I have up here. I get my decimal point. You'll notice that my decimal points are lined up nicely. And I have 0 whole numbers. 0 plus 0 is going to be 0. So my answer is going to be 55 hundredths, and that does match the picture here. Now let's build the same thing using coins. Coins are a great thing to use if you're dealing with whole numbers or tenths and hundredths. Not so great for thousandths, but we're not doing that right now. Okay, so I start out with 3 tenths. So a dime is going to represent my tenths. Now if I wanted to, I could do 30 hundredths, but I'm honestly kind of lazy, so I'm not going to. Okay, so I have 3 tenths. Now I need 2 tenths for this bottom number. And I need 5 hundredths. So I'm going to combine all of this together. Again, I'm going to kind of group my tenths together because it's easy to count there. So I'm going to count by tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So this is like 50 cents. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 5 cents. So 50 plus 5 is 55 cents, 55 hundredths. And that matches my answer. Now, if this were subtraction, I would do the same exact thing, but I would just use the subtraction rules that I would use for whole numbers. Because if you noticed, once I got everything place value wise lined up, there was nothing special other than remembering to have a decimal point. Okay, I'm just adding or subtracting as normal. Now, grid paper. This is your best friend for decimals. When you have a number that goes into decimal place, grid paper is set up perfectly for place value. You just put one digit in every box. So if I was going to set up the problem I had before, 0.3, I'm going to line up my decimal. I can go ahead and put my decimal. In fact, I can put decimals all the way down my page if I wanted to. Second number was 0 and 25 hundredths. I'm lined up perfectly. If I want that placeholder 0, I can put it there. And then I'm going to either add or subtract. Let's subtract this time since we added last time. Okay, so I have 0 minus 5, so I can't take 5 away from nothing, so I have to borrow. So this is going to become a 2. We'll cross that out. So then this is going to become a 10, which doesn't fit in there, but you get the idea. We'll cross that out. So now I have 10 over here. 10 take away 5. It's going to give me an answer of 5. Okay, now 2 minus 2, 0. Decimal point, 0 minus 0 is 0. So my answer is 5 hundredths. And we can make this a little bit more obvious here by drawing in our line. But grid paper is an excellent, excellent way to organize your thinking, keep your place value lined up nicely without doing a whole lot of extra work. Use the resources that are given to you.